Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk, our syndicated television show and our syndicated radio show. So today's guest is our expert, who is number one, a chiropractor, right? A great one. And he has a wonderful foundation that he's working with. And it is called the Truth, Faith, and Action.org. And he's doing wonderful work with them. And he is also in ministry, he and his wife. So I want to introduce you to my friend, Kevan Kruse. How are you today?
We're doing well. How are you, Kathryn?
I'm doing great, except for my kneecap. Of course, you knew about that, right? They'll take that out too.
Well, you could always whack the other one, and then that way, you have sympathy.
Right. So you had this fabulous conference with these wonderful pastors. So let's talk a little bit about your organization and how it's coming together and where you want to take it. Let's talk about it. Go right ahead, Kevan.
Well, I think the most obvious thing, we can all see what's happening in our country. I mean, we become a country that's divided intensely. But look at what this division is happening to our children. We're getting a tremendous amount of confusion. We all went through, and I've said this before, we've talked about COVID, yada, yada, yada. But right now, we have 40% of our young people, Gen Z, that are identifying as LGBTQ, right? Now, that's just one thing. And then we have the movie come out, Sound of Freedom. We realize, that not only are we one of the purveyor of child pornography, but now through this border situation, we have, and this is 6-8 months ago that our government admitted we had, 80,000 children that came through these borders with no parent, and we don't know where they're at. So we're starting to see this immigration of children in this country. So if you love your children, okay, and you see what's happening in this country, it's disturbing. It's more disturbing than the economics. It's more disturbing than anything else, because these are people's lives that are really being destroyed. And so, this is happening because the church isn't saying or doing anything about it. In fact, there's a lot of churches that are joining this, right? And so we've run into this situation where, Christians have withdrawn from politics. We really don't take our message beyond the four walls of our church, and we've relegated Christianity in sometimes to just a short prayer we prayed once in our lives. But the bottom line is, what we're facing now is something that we cannot win unless we work together. And so that's what we tried to do. And so, unfortunately, I'd love to tell you everybody wants to be involved, even to protect our children about obvious things, but that's not the case. They might address it within their four walls. It's kind of like a bunch of silos. The silos around the city are all going higher and higher. Meanwhile, everything outside of the silo is literally just plunging into, desperation and destruction. So, we said, well, what should we do together? And it became obvious that it was the kids, and so that's what we did. We decided to bring in a group of people to talk about the war on our children. And there is a war on our children. And if Jesus said this, and this is the thing, if we're going to be Christians, we have to start doing what Jesus did. And Jesus said, if anybody hurts a little one, I'm sorry, folks. He said there's a millstone coming for your neck. No, I'm sorry. A millstone is nothing compared to what he's going to do to you. This is the same guy that when he came into talking to the politicians of his day, okay, the scribes and Pharisees, right? The lawyers, the judges, okay? he called them the most reprehensible names are practically really in the Bible. Whited sepulchres, right? He called them snakes and vipers, all kinds of these things that they actually inhibit people from getting into the kingdom of heaven. So these are the names he called them. He took 8 to 32 hours to make a whip, and he went in and drove out the corruption. And so where did we get this idea as Christians that we are never supposed to offend anybody? It's not realistic. It's not what Jesus did. And then Jesus said they would do the same for us. And so we've been looking for something that will get Americans to stand up for anything at this point, because we seem to be railroaded by any agenda that's out there. And so we felt like the hearts and minds of our children are the thing that we could polarize about. So one of our first things we did is, and I'll give you a list of some of our speakers, but to the breakfast in the morning, which we tried to get the pastors out, we actually had Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, who's the most famous rabbi in the world. And we also had a huge panel, and that panel of course included Jonathan. We had Kevin and Sam Sorbo. We had Lucas Miles. We had Pastor Rob McCoy. We had two doctors on there, Dr. Mark McDonald, which is a child psychiatrist. And we also had Dr. James Thorpe. We had Nate Lewis with Innocence Rescue Mission. And of course, they're actually rescuing from sex trafficking and so on and so forth. So we had a tremendous number. And then we also had Walt Heyer, is a guy who has detransitioned, and now he actually leads Sex Change Regret. So some of these testimonies, we had them all on a panel asking all these questions about what's happening to our children. And it was absolutely electric. Really one of the best things you'll see, because, you know, we look at Hollywood, we look at education. We also had Kevin McGarry, who is an expert on critical race theory and how DEI is, of course, that's what it's kind of moved into, is really racism is being taught in our schools, right? As if that's the most important thing about us. So you look at about why did America buy into Martin Luther King? Because it's very simple. He imagined a day when we would be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. So you can imagine him turning over in his grave that our children are being taught literally the most important thing about you is the color of your skin, right? We're just talking about some pigment here. So you can see, you know, whether it's racism, whether it's, you know, curriculum. We have 6 or 7 states right now that are mandating an LGBTQ education for your children, right? And you don't have a say about that in a lot of those states, especially about certain parts of it. So we have this assault on our values. Really, everything that made this country great is now something that is becoming despised. And that's why, if you're looking around you and you wonder why we have a generation of people that hate America, it's because they've been raised to be that way. Right. So that was the gist of the conference. We have, of course, every one of them had individual times as well. And we are coming out with all of that content on our YouTube channel. Of course, our website is truthfaithandaction.org. We also have Truth, Faith, and Action as well on with the YouTube channel as well. So you can find all our content. We're releasing this around the world because we really want people to understand what's happening to our children. And that's where it gets a little difficult because, you know, the Bible's very clear. Whoever trains the child is the one who determines which way they're going to go, right? And that's something that we've forgotten, right? But if you go back and look at the Naked Communist, this is an old book now at this point, they were able to put their finger on exactly what made America great and how they were going to infiltrate America and what they were going to teach our children. That's why the communists famously said, we will destroy America without firing a shot. Now, can we see that happening around the world? We're seeing globalist government, but right here in America, we're seeing this socialist agenda, and it's being perpetrated on our children. And that is the future. Our children are that future.
You know, it's amazing, Kevin. You also work somewhat out of Honduras. Am I correct?
So, you know, this is probably the first thing I got involved with is that, you know, I remember that passage where Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And then later, Jesus asks him 3 times, okay, do you love me? And of course, Peter gets the chance to correct what he said before. I do love you. Then he said, feed my sheep. But really, the word is lambs. The lambs are the children sheep. Does that make sense? And
Right.
so when you look at the situation, it is hard for, if you're being honest with yourself, it's hard to look around America, and there are many needy people. But when you go overseas, it becomes obvious. So I had a man come in our office and had a Honduras ministry. And so I joined him and have been very happy. It's called Serving Others in Love Ministries. Everything we do is a project down in Honduras. We don't give nobody no money. We give food. We do projects. We
Yeah,
help those
right.
people, to hopefully churches to be able to reach out to people. One event we did, we had a stadium full of people, 10,000 people, and millions of people saw it. They heard the gospel. I think we gave away a few hundred bikes. People left with 40 pounds of food per family, and that was
Oh, wow.
4,000 bags of that. So there's a lot of hurt in the world today,
Right.
and Jesus, is clear what he did when he was here. And Paul said, true religion undefiled before God and the Father is to visit the widows and the fatherless in their affliction. But what you have to wrap your head around in America is we have an entire generation of unparented children. That's why they're acting like this. That's why they're craving for the attention. And that is exactly what socialism wants. Socialism wants the government to be God and the government to be the parent of the children. Those aren't your kids anymore. And you can
That's right.
see those rights crumbling away around America.
Thank you for joining me today in the first segment that you'll be able to see up on our website and all of our stations of Kevan Kruse, Dr. Kevan Kruse, talking about this wonderful organization that he's part of and started.
Yes. Yep.
And that is truthfaithinaction.org. I want to thank you for joining me today on Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk, our radio show. And what is I just gave your website out, but you want to give it again?
Sure. It's truthfaithinaction.org. And of course, if you want to get a hold of us, it's info@truthfaithinaction.org. So you can see our website. We have all the videos you can download. Similar name on YouTube as well.
All right. And thank you for joining us today on Kathryn Raaker's World. And Let's Just Talk. Go to our website at KathrynRaakersWorld.com, and you'll see Dr. Kevan is one of our experts up on Kathryn Raaker's World. See you soon. Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk. And don't forget the chef, you and I. So anyhow, what I was going to say is that we have a wonderful expert that we just love him and his foundation, his chiropractic, everything, his ministry. And the newest thing that he's doing is truthfaithandaction.org. And they are trying to save children. And these are the most precious things we have in the world. And we really need to absolutely get involved. And I mean, get involved to what's happening to our children. You can see what's going on in our country right now, which is scary. So, and let me introduce Dr. Kevan Kruse. He is the founder of truthfaithandaction.org, as well as he also has a full chiropractic care, right?
Yep.
And lots of other things. So he's going to tell you. So let's touch on, now you did this year. You did your conference this year. It was 3 days. Am I correct?
It was actually 2 days, but 3 events. Yep.
3 events. And who did you invite? So people that are just tuning in know.
So, it was a little easier than we thought. Of course, we have some good, amazing people within our alliance. And of course, these are people I didn't know, but we were able to get Jonathan Cahn, Rabbi Jonathan. He is the most famous rabbi in the world. And he came out to the breakfast and spoke to the pastors. and it was electric. If you know who he is, you'll be able to hear one of the best messages of the year. And it's all about, remembering who we are as an identity, as America. And I think that's part of what's really been lost. But we got some of that. America had its values really rooted in Christianity and our dedication to God. I mean, it's still on a lot of license plates, so people kind of still remember some of this. But it was electrifying, Jonathan's message. And one of the things that he said, for me, and I thought about this, because I've asked myself, what am I doing? I mean, I'm a chiropractor. I have 2 offices. I'm not retired, right? So why and suddenly am I being thrust into this? And
God
I
wants
think
you to be.
that, well, you can see that, but it's also because other people aren't, right? And
Mhm.
so what we have going on with our children is an attack on every single level. And of course, the foundation of that even is not just, our religious heritage, but our parental rights are absolutely at stake. In California, they have a situation where if you don't affirm the child's new identity, your school guidance counselor can come in and groom your child. Okay.
Mhm.
And then Dr. Mark McDonald's even talked about a story where an Indian family moved here from India, and they had to move back so that they could have, rights to their own children.
Right.
So this first part of it is really important, that the children were given to their parents by God. And the parents are, we talked about that unparented generation. So it's, Jonathan Kahn just does a great job of showing you how it starts with the children. But we have to really put our finger on that, and we have to go back, because those children are really the future. And then we talked about our celebrity panel. I'll go through a few of them here. Kevin Sorbo, a lot of people, of course, he's a household name. Hercules was the most watched show on the planet for a while. But Kevin's making Christian movies. And of course, a lot of people saw, God's Not Dead. But he is still making great movies. But he talks about, just look at all the blacklisting that's going on, and the stories that are coming out of, people and what they're doing just to be involved in Hollywood. Even some of these documentaries that have come out. I know the first one I saw the other day was Quiet on the Set, which was about Nickelodeon and some of these things. But you see what Hollywood, and of course we live in Florida, so we probably got closer to the truth about what's going on with Disney. But literally, Disney lost billions of dollars to promote, okay, a woke agenda. And a woke agenda is really a broke agenda, right? I mean,
That's
it
for
is
sure.
all of a sudden, and same thing, we have kids that are that age, and all of a sudden, everybody's gay, everybody's trans. You see what I'm saying? They're pushing this. They're taking their own stories that their forefather wrote, and they're rewriting them. Okay. And that's what the church is doing as well. So Kevin just gets into it and talks about what Hollywood is doing to our children. I don't know if you've ever heard Sam Sorbo. Have you ever heard her before? So
No,
she's got,
I haven't, but I'd love to.
she's really good. He definitely did well. Sam is quite the lady. She's very well spoken. She's got a podcast, TV show. She helped produce a lot of the movies, yada yada. But she talked about how she goes, well, I didn't sacrifice my Hollywood career. She gave it up for something better. And she literally, God called her back to the home, and she raised her kids. So she's a big homeschool activist. And so she talks about, one of the most powerful stories was, how her daughter was in school, right? And they hadn't maybe made the full change yet. But
Mhm.
later on, as a teenager, her daughter comes to her and says, the reason why I always felt stupid was because of something that happened in class, something that was said about her, right? And that is, of course, something that we, forget, and one of the other guys we talked about and had his full testimony was Walt Heyer. And he's
Mhm.
actually a man who was transitioned.
Mhm.
And the gist of it's really simple. He was never loved as a child. He was abused by his mom and dad. His grandmother cross-dressed him.
Oh,
That was the only time he ever got any kind of love or attention, right? Now, isn't that right there what we need to hear? We have an entire generation that has been paid no attention, has not been sent this message of love, and now they're vulnerable. And when he started to even ended up bringing his grandma's dress home, and then again, because of that, he then was preyed upon. Okay, so he was sexually abused, I believe, by his uncle. Now, his uncle is a lot younger than his dad, but that was another thing. So this man literally has a family, has kids. He's working for one of the best companies in the world. He's literally one of the guys designing Hondas. Okay. And he goes to see his doctor, and his doctor basically tells him, well, the only way you're ever going to be happy, this guy's in pain. Okay. He's in misery, is to transition. He gives up his family, his kids, his job. This guy ends up being in the gutter. And it's, of course, an amazing story because he comes to Jesus. It was most powerful redemptive story of our conference. So, and there's 54,000 people on Reddit, the Reddit board for detransitioning. So when they say that there's only a few of these detransitioners out there, that's a lie. We got 54,000 of them on this site. That shows you that the world is hungry to hear the truth, because he keeps going back to his doctor and asking, when am I going to feel any better? When is this treatment going to work?
Did he transition to be a woman?
Yes, he did. And he, of course, has transitioned back. He had an absolute epiphany. Something happened in a prayer and he saw Jesus. I mean, it's an incredible story. You know, definitely one of the best ones.
But he transitioned back to being a man.
And he's been that way for 15 years or so.
Did he go back to his wife?
He's been married, I mean, longer than that now. And, you know, I mean, he says Snoopy isn't coming back. Okay, so he's clear about that. But the bottom line is, this guy is the founder of sexchangeregret.com. So it's an
what was it again?
story.
Sexchangeregret.com.
Regret. Yep.
.com. Okay.
Well, you can see that's a powerful story. So you see where it starts to stack up. But our first speaker, and just to try and tell you a couple minutes about that, was Rob McCoy. And Rob McCoy is the pastor of Godspeak. I mean, they shut down California churches, but they said, hey, if you're a cannabis dealer, a strip club, alcohol, those are necessary, but churches must be shut down. Of course, he didn't go along with it. Okay, so you can imagine it's over $300,000 of fines that they had for their church. So this is a guy who's standing up. And he said, you know, with his church, that what's happened is that they focus so much on the gospel and evangelizing people, but people are so tired of politics that they just kind of withdrew from politics. And that happened all over California. So the end result is that the Christian life isn't just about one prayer we pray one time in our life, that God can be involved in all parts of our lives. So when we abandon politics, we abandon God's perspective about everything. We surrendered all of that. And you can see that's why, just look at sex trafficking in California. California literally voted recently to take it from a misdemeanor, from trafficking children. It took 6 or 7 attempts to make it happen, right? And then the people that are purchasing the children, that's only recently been changed to be more than a misdemeanor, but they still said 16 and 17-year-olds are not, okay, felonies. They're still misdemeanors. So in other words, a 16, 17-year-old can sell their body for sex, and that's just a misdemeanor. They can't buy, you know, get a tattoo. They can't buy cigarettes, these kinds of things, right? This is what's happening, right? You know, so this is what's going on in California, and it's really a litmus test of where they want to take our whole country. So that's what Rob McCoy was really able to share with us, that what's happening in California, if we don't get involved politically, because the people that are making these decisions, okay, are not Christians, and they never hear from us, right? Because we're so passive, we never show up where the decisions are actually being made. And he's really saying that this is what's caused the whole thing to happen. And of course, like he said, in his church, Calvary Chapel in Southern, you know, California, there was more of them I think then he said maybe than Dunkin' Donuts. That's how many churches they had. But how did that church affect its society? Was it really a salt in light of the decay? No, no, they weren't. You see, so we have to ask ourselves questions as a church. You know, what are we doing that's not what Jesus did? How did we get this great country, and how are we really losing it? So that's, you know, Rob McCoy got into how we got here, and that was one of the big things, was withdrawing from politics.
Wow. Unreal. So let me ask you, you're going to be, you have wonderful things up on YouTube and
Yes.
where else?
So our website is truthfaithanaction.org. Okay. And of course, our website for, our YouTube channel is very similarly named. If you go to the website, you'll see all the videos are downloads. Some of them are still in the process because it does take quite a while to produce these, but we're using all the speakers, and it's just great stuff. We want to turn this into action. You know, the Bible talks about how if we look ourselves in the mirror and then we straightway forget what we just saw. And that's what's happening. You know, we can talk about finances in the church. We can talk about relationships in the church. But how many churches are talking about the fact that our children are being seduced right under our noses? Right. And so this is what's happening to our country, and it's getting to a fever pitch where there's no way to miss what's happening at this point.
Right. I want to thank you. We've run out of time again, Kevin.
That's not hard to do.
No, it's not hard to do. And so where can they go to get more information again?
It's truthfaithanaction.org. And that's, of course, our website. You'll find out about our alliance partners, how we got formed. But the bottom line is you're going to have to join people with where you're at. You have to find out not the people you want to do something. You have to find the people that are already doing what you feel God is leading you to do. And in our case, we actually had to found an organization to help make that happen. And it wasn't hard once you started to break the ice and talk to people.
That's for sure. I want to thank you so much for joining me. And we'll be back with you in about a couple weeks to do a couple more. How about that?
Sounds good. Thank
you very much for joining me today on Kathryn Raaker's World. That's KathrynRaakers world.com. And the chef, you and I, and Let's Just Talk, they're all together on one big website so that you'll be able to find it. But also subscribe to our YouTube channel like you subscribe to Kevin's. Right? Right. And thank you. It's been a wonderful experience again, as always. See you soon.